A little while ago, I posted a 2 or 3 minute video about this game, Voyage of the S M Pandora, and that was the result of a massive technical failure I had after I had recorded an almost 49-minute or a 49-minute video about the game. A lot of people have written to me and emailed me and made some comments on my channel asking whether I was going to do this again. And as I responded, it was kind of painful because I put in so much effort to that video. But I do really love this game, and I'm going to try something a little different here, which is to do a much shorter treatment of the game, really just talking about the reasons why it, I think, is worth making the effort to track it down, get it to the table, and play it if you are somebody interested in either the science fiction theme or space exploration theme and solo gameplay. Those are the three aspects of this game I think that really shine. A caution, I'm pulling back here to show you some of the components. I'm working from available files online. This was originally published as a magazine game, but I'm not working from that. I'm working from downloadable files, and what you see here is indeed a 3-ring binder and a bunch of pieces of paper and actually a calculator. So there's one die. If there are, oh, and there's worksheets too. Here you go. Worksheet number 1 and worksheet number 2 from a game previously played. If this bookkeeping element, minor calculation element, and the fact that I find it easiest to play in part using a 3-ring binder is not something you're up for, then you should stop watching this video now. If it is, I'm going to attempt in 15-ish minutes to give an overview of the game and talk you through how you can get started, and also give you a little bit of my perspective on why this game is one of my favorites and has been for so many years. So as we look here at a random terrain that you could land on, let's just quickly go through the sequence of play as an overview before I get into some aspects of the game. The first thing that you're going to do is choose whether you are going on a 10-month, 20-month, or 30-month tour of duty. Typically, I would recommend do the shorter version first, but honestly, in this game, the 10-month tour, you're not going to have enough time to do anything, so I recommend playing at least with the 20-month tour or preferably the 30-month tour. You are then rolling on the intelligence value of your characters. Now, there is not, this really isn't RPG enough like to roll on all values, but you do roll on an intelligence value for your various characters. You're going out with just these kind of generic commander, medical officer, navigator. The counters have values, as we'll see, that do reflect to some extent what you would think they would have in terms of capacity to do various things, but the intelligence value is just basically random. So in this case, I guess the medical officer and the ground survey officer are the smartest ones going down from there. Once you do all of that, you are going to a standard paragraph, paragraph 201 in the paragraph book, and reading about the situation, and you are beginning. You are then going to create values for the various planets that you decide to go to, as we will see in more detail on this interstellar map here, and ultimately moving from the macro view of this planet down to the planet's surface. Once you decide on who is going to be in your actual mission, in your rover, or on foot. And we will cover all of this now. So let's just start by taking a look at what they tell you in the rules, which is this is a solitaire game of interstellar exploration. The player controls the biological survey mission Pandora, the S M Pandora, as it travels the starways in search of extraterrestrial life forms. You have crew, robots, and equipment to collect specimens, and then, of course, minimizing your loss of human life. So let's see how this game executes that kind of unusual set of requirements here. Again, I am using materials that have been posted online in various places, BGG and elsewhere, to create this game and to play this game. We're going to take first a look at the macro picture here, which is the interstellar display. And what it shows you is your starting point, your Pandora entry point, and you are going to be traveling in a set number of months, depending on how long your tour is, to these various planets. When you land on the planet, you are going to roll on the planet table here, and you are going to come up with a paragraph number represented by these 3 digits. This is a paragraph-based game, and this is where the 3-ring notebook comes into play. I've got these paragraphs printed out here. Won't show you too many, but here's a sense of how it works. You're referred to a paragraph number during the course of the game, and it will tell you what the outcome of that encounter is. The paragraphs here on the table are descriptive of the atmospheric and climate and geological aspects of the planet. So you will be getting information from that table that will tell you about the climate, how much water there is, what the gravity is, what the atmosphere is, and you will be plotting this information, and the information will then impact what happens to you when you are on the planet's surface itself. There are more die rolls and more paragraph lookups to tell you exactly where on the planet you land in the form of a hex, and you will be dealing with different terrain depending on where you land in the planet, and indeed depending on what the climate is and how much water there is. These maps serve multi-purposes. So I think there are 8 of them available to you potentially to land on. So this one, for example, is one with vegetation of various sorts. It has mountain areas and it has some rivers. We will look here just at another sample. You could be landing on this map, which has some cave structures. It also does have mountains, and it has some flat surfaces. And there are different rules for the terrain effects and specific rules for the environment based on the circumstance of where you are, interacting with whether you, for example, have heavy or light gravity when you are on this portion of the planet. You also have the potential for, here's one last one I'll show you, you have the potential to detect an alien city. There is an abyss here, there's a lot of water on this planet, but as an example, if this was the terrain of a planet with an Arctic climate, you would find that indeed the alien city is simply a glacial mass. So it is realistic in that sense. If you happen to roll on a planet with this map that has a more hospitable environment, you may have the opportunity to actually explore the alien city. So let's take a quick look now at who exactly is doing the exploration and what that means. This counter represents the General Science Officer, and the information on it in the numbers here has to do with the first number is your capture combat rating number. If you are finding and encountering a local species and decide to capture it, this is the value that you use when determining that outcome. The second number is the kill. So for example, this makes sense. This is the science officer. He's going to have a better rating for capturing than for trying to kill, because he probably would actually be trying to capture rather than kill. The middle number is his weight. The number next to it is the port value, which we'll get to in a minute, and his speed. The reason this calculator is necessary in the game, or one like it is necessary in the game, is that you are aboard your BSM Pandora, but you are sending down a shuttle and potentially sending down a rover or traveling on foot onto the surface of the planet. And there is a component of the game which requires calculation involving that weight number that I pointed out here, as well as the weight numbers that are on other counters like this laser here. The weight number of this is a 2 because you need to, there's a port value, so you can only carry so much. Each individual person can only carry so much, and collectively everything can only weigh so much. And when you get to factoring in the gravity of the planet and where you are traveling in the planet, this can also come into play. So there is a big aspect of the game that is planning who you will be sending down to the actual planet itself. So when you get to the planet, you are going to encounter creatures. The back of the counter is going to have a number on it. This refers to a particular paragraph in the paragraph event booklet, and the front of it is going to be the indication of what this is. So you would refer in this case to paragraph 31. I'm not going to read you everything it says, but it describes this large scorpion-like creature and it explains what happens to it. Now, you'll notice these numbers on the counter. Oh, let me just say one more thing. Here's another creature. Some of the creatures, in addition to having just the paragraph description, also give a victory point addition. So there are a number of ways to get victory points in the game that we'll go over. One of them is by capturing and or killing these special creatures that give you additional point values. So one of the unique aspects of this game is that you are not simply mandated to kill everything you find. You can discover it, you can capture it, and you can evaluate it for various values. And these are represented by these numbers here. So each time you play the game, the value of a particular creature differs. These are modifiers to a dice roll. The first one here is the intelligence modifier. Now in this case, you can see red, it's a negative. So no matter what, this poor spiker's not going to be that smart. Then you have a combat modifier, an aggression modifier, and a speed modifier. So by looking at these numbers, even before you do your die roll, you can have some sense about whether something is particularly aggressive and or smart, and whether or not you would want to try to capture it and discover things about it, or what it can tell you about the planet, or simply outright try to kill it based on what types of weapons you have, the strength and or health of the members encountering it or not. So this is one of the points about the game that sort of advertises it as being different every time you play, because you are going to be, to some extent, encountering different values for the same creatures the more you play. I'm not really sure that that's the biggest factor in whether or not the game feels different. At the end of the video, I'll talk a little bit about the replay value of it. In the interest of time, I'm really glossing over a lot of the rules, but I do need to point out something about this indication of supply checks. Oppressive, heavy, Earth-like, and light refers to the atmospheric conditions on the planet. And if you are in an oppressive atmosphere, you need to do a supply check every 6 hours. If you're in heavy, you get 12 hours, Earth-like 16, and light 22. Oh, you also 30 if you're in near weightless. Supply checks, I'm not going to have the time to go through them, but in effect, what you are doing when you're setting up your mission here, in addition to the weight values and the port values, and in other words, calculating how much stuff you're carrying based on how much capacity you have, you need to bring something called supply. Now, this is abstracted. It just simply is supply. It's food, it's, I guess, fuel resources, other types of resources. You can imagine whatever you want them to be. They are abstracted as just quote-unquote supply, but you need to carry some with you. And when you are on the planet, as time is passing, depending on the atmosphere, you are then required to stop what you're doing, check for supply, and based on the supply check rules, which I'm not going to go into, you come up with a value of how much supply you have used. And if you end up using up your supply, there are consequences for it. If you're running low on supply, you need to decide whether you're going to continue exploring and how far away you're going to move from your landing point, because you know that if you venture too far out, you're going to have another supply check, and there are penalties for running out of supply on the planet. The last thing I want to do before I give you my overall thoughts on this is just to take a look at two of the sheets I filled out to show you some of the bookkeeping that is involved. You are, as I mentioned, visiting the planets, and you're writing down the name of the planet and the various values that you find on the planet. I don't write down all the events that happen, but I do indicate the overall outcome. In this case, the first planet in this game, nothing happened, but I did waste 3 months' time finding that there was basically nothing there. So this is one aspect of bookkeeping that you need to do. I also write down some of the particular creatures that I might find or their features in my notes, just to refer back to them as to where I am. The other tracking is the victory points and the creatures that you may capture and quote unquote discover various aspects of their existence, whether it is attempting to communicate with them, in which you would have discovered their intelligence, or fighting them, in which case you may discover their combat and aggression, etc. And then keeping track of any victory points you get based on all of this. And you have a way of keeping track of, by the way, this is incompletely filled out, so it would look much messier if this was representing a complete game. You are keeping track of the bots and tools that you have for the various mission lengths, and how that impacts your victory conditions at the end. Ditto your crew log. You are keeping track of what happens to them, and then basically totaling up all the victory conditions and points that you're getting, and what you have earned versus what you've lost versus what you needed to get. So in this particular case, which was a truncated game, you would have needed 21 to win, and in this example, only attained 11. My overall thoughts on how great this game is are contained in the 2-minute Thank You, Mr. Butterfield video that you can go watch on my channel. But I'll just say here, answering the question, why come back to this? Why do this? I think this game is really a hidden gem for solo players who are interested in space exploration. Certainly for anyone that has an interest in what a paragraph-driven game is like. And the fact that the files are available in various places online makes it possible to create this game some 30 plus years later if you don't want to go out and seek an original copy of it. I find it to be immersive, and even though it is paragraph driven, there is, I think, some replayability in the sense that you can mark off, if you choose, which paragraphs you have gone to in the past. And if you roll on that, simply, roll again. For example, if you end up creating the exact same type of planetary condition, you can decide to do that again. Now, is it infinitely replayable that way? No, of course it is not. But it is replayable enough, I think, that it is worth it. Again, if you fall into the category of the gamer that I just mentioned. If you are not afraid of some light bookkeeping, or if you even enjoy light bookkeeping as I do, the various ways that you can have victory points here, I find refreshing, because you get points for doing things beyond just killing. So you get points for, again, quote unquote, discovering various attributes of the creatures that you find. And I should mention also, there are a couple things that aren't just creatures. There's a statue you can find. There's something called the living statue, and a couple of other things that you can also unearth. Again, does that get repetitive after a while? Yes. I don't think you're going to play this game 50 times in a row and say, oh yeah, that was new every time. You're not. but there are certainly a bunch of plays in it, and if you enjoy it and put it away and come back to it, in a year or two, I think it can be an enjoyable experience. Anyway, getting back to the victory conditions. So you can lose victory points, for example, as you might expect, if you're damaging or losing some of your bots. If you use up particular tools, you will lose some. If you overshoot the time frame of your mission, that really has killed me in the past, because you're losing 5 victory points for every month you extend your tour. That aspect of the game, getting points for planets explored versus losing points for extending your mission time, it forces decisions on you to, is it worth it going to another planet? Maybe I'll find some artifacts that have more victory points that can give me. Maybe I will uncover some creatures that have additional victory points, as some of them do. These are some of the decisions that I think are very thematic and help with the immersive quality of the game. Ditto the mission planning. What characters will you be taking with you? What equipment? How many cages will you take with you? Because you need to take a cage for everything that you think you are going to capture and bring back. You must have a cage available for it. So how many of those cages will you take? What types of weaponry will you take? How heavy are they? Interplayed with what the atmospheric conditions are like on the planet and how that affects how much you could carry. So it is, in a pleasant way, almost like you're pulling your hair out, because there are so many different little facets of things that you need to consider when you're putting everything together, that for me make this just one of my all-time favorite games. And as I said at the beginning of this segment, I think it's a hidden gem, and I highly recommend people seeking it out who are dedicated to solo play, interested in any type of science, no matter how far-fetched, and certainly space exploration. So there you have it. I will not be doing another video on Voyage of the BSM Pandora.